Hello, you're watching the Health Today channel. We often believe that the enemies of aging are wrinkles, gray hair, or physical fatigue. However, true aging does not begin on the face. It begins in the brain. It starts when memory becomes less reliable, when emotions lose their intensity, and when interest in life gradually decreases. What is most concerning is that these changes often occur not because of age itself, but because of the foods we consider healthy. Yes, even the food placed in our fruit bowl can slowly affect brain function, reducing mental clarity, mood stability, and cognitive performance. I am not saying this to alarm you. I am a physician with more than 30 years of clinical experience, and I have seen many patients come to me with similar complaints. Doctor, I have become forgetful. It is difficult for me to concentrate. Sometimes I stand in front of the refrigerator and cannot remember why I came. Most of them believed this was a normal part of aging, but the reality is different. The brain does not age automatically. It is affected by what we consume every day. Here lies the paradox. Many foods considered symbols of health do not support brain cells, but instead contribute to inflammation, fatigue, and mental fog. This is especially true for certain fruits. We are accustomed to thinking that the more fruit we eat, the better. However, this assumption is overly simplistic. Throughout my years of practice, I have observed people with normal laboratory results, healthy body weight, and active lifestyles experience a decline in cognitive clarity simply because they regularly consumed certain fruits without realizing their potential impact on brain health. Today, I will explain this in more detail. You will learn about 5 fruits that may negatively affect the brain when consumed excessively, and 5 fruits that can support brain health and help reduce the risk of cognitive decline. I encourage you to watch until the end, as the final fruit is both important and unexpected. It may help slow brain aging and support mental sharpness even after the age of 60. These observations are based on my clinical experience and the histories of many patients. One of them was a woman, Mrs. Maria, aged 68. She was physically active, practiced Nordic walking, and believed she followed a healthy diet. However, she began to notice memory difficulties. Doctor, I read a book, and an hour later I cannot remember what the first chapter was about. I have become more irritable and often misplace my phone. After careful evaluation, we identified a key factor. Every day she consumed 2 to 3 fruits she believed were harmless. In her case, these fruits contributed to chronic low-grade inflammation in cerebral blood vessels, impaired nutrient absorption, and caused fluctuations in blood sugar levels. After these foods were removed from her diet, 3 weeks passed, and she contacted me herself. Doctor, it feels as if a veil has been lifted from my mind. I feel like myself again. This is why I want to share information that is rarely discussed publicly and often avoided, because it is inconvenient. Not every fruit is beneficial in every situation. Some may negatively affect brain health by disrupting neural connections, accelerating cognitive aging, and increasing the risk of dementia. Others, on the contrary, support neurons, improve vascular function, and activate recovery processes in the brain. Have you noticed that you feel tired more quickly? That your interest in new activities or social interaction has decreased? That your mind sometimes feels foggy and even simple tasks cause irritation? This is not a matter of personality or motivation. It is related to biochemistry. These are signals that the brain may not be receiving optimal nutrition. It is like an engine that is filled not with high-quality fuel, but with sweet syrup, shiny, aromatic, yet harmful. The most concerning part is that many people do this every day without realizing that they are gradually harming themselves from within. In my clinical experience, after the age of 50, nutrition becomes either the main form of medicine or the main source of harm. Not medications, not physical exercise, but what is placed on the plate. As we grow older, the brain becomes increasingly sensitive to even minor dietary factors. Some foods help it maintain function and resilience, while others gradually reduce years of mental clarity. For this reason, I ask you not to perceive this video as another diet trend or fashionable recommendation. This is a discussion about your future, about your memory, your cognitive health, and your identity. And the most important, the simplest, yet truly life-changing point will be shared at the end. This is advice I usually give only to my closest patients during private consultations. It can help protect the brain from further decline, even if early signs of forgetfulness are already present. Now, please prepare. In the next section, I will explain why the brain begins to require additional support after the age of 50, how nutrition directly affects its function, and why some fruits can negatively affect neurons, while others may support and protect them. Please do not skip any part, as this information can contribute to many years of mental clarity and emotional stability. When a person is young, the brain functions like a well-coordinated orchestra. Each cell performs its role precisely. Mental processes are efficient, learning is rapid, and memory functions with ease. Thoughts flow freely and effortlessly. However, with time, this rhythm gradually changes. Cellular processes slow down, blood vessels become less efficient, and metabolic exchange becomes less active. If, during this period, the brain continues to be exposed to factors that cause irritation or metabolic stress, it begins to deteriorate. This is not a metaphor. It is a biological process. Neurons age not simply because of time, but because of overload, toxins, and chronic low-grade inflammation, conditions that are often created by our own dietary habits. Early in my medical career, I believed that dementia was an inevitable part of aging. However, the more patients I observed, the clearer it became that cognitive decline is not unavoidable. Brain function can be preserved. The key is learning to recognize its signals. The brain is not a rigid structure. It is dynamic, adaptable, and capable of renewal at any age, provided it receives appropriate metabolic support. Many people are surprised that fruits, commonly viewed as symbols of health, may sometimes have negative effects. The explanation is straightforward. After the age of 50, metabolism changes. The body becomes less efficient at processing large amounts of fructose. Excessive consumption of sweet fruits can elevate blood glucose levels, contribute to microinflammation in cerebral blood vessels, and impair normal blood flow. As a result, individuals may experience mental fog, fatigue, and memory difficulties. I have observed this pattern repeatedly, particularly in people who replace full meals with fruit, believing it to be a healthy choice. One of my patients, a 62-year-old man named Nikolai, was physically active and had followed a healthy diet throughout his life. However, in recent years he noticed declining memory, missed appointments, confusion with dates, and difficulty maintaining conversations. Medical examinations showed that he was in excellent physical condition. When I asked him to describe his diet, he proudly explained that every morning he consumed 3 bananas, an orange, and fruit juice. This dietary pattern was a significant contributing factor. After reducing the excessive intake of certain fruits, his condition began to improve within 1 month. After 3 months, he told me, "Doctor, it feels as though my brain has started working again." This is how nutrition affects the brain, not instantly but profoundly. Sugar, including fructose, can cause insulin fluctuations. Elevated insulin levels interfere with the ability of neurons to efficiently utilize energy. When this occurs repeatedly, cognitive function gradually declines. This process represents slow, silent brain aging caused not by years, but by metabolic overload. However, there is another perspective. The brain can be nourished not by damage, but by support. Certain fruits act as protectors of neurons. They contain antioxidants, B-group vitamins, flavonoids, and other compounds that reduce inflammation, support vascular health, and promote cellular recovery. These fruits do more than provide energy. They activate processes associated with brain resilience and functional preservation. I share this not as a theorist, but as a physician who has observed these effects in real patients. I once worked with an elderly couple. He was 70, she was 68. The husband had begun to forget the names of his grandchildren, and his wife became concerned that he was losing cognitive engagement. After adjusting their diet and introducing several simple foods, which I will mention later, noticeable improvement occurred within 6 months. His memory improved, and his emotional state stabilized. When they returned for follow-up, his wife said, "Doctor, I see interest in life in his eyes again." This was not a miracle, it was physiology. The brain responds positively to appropriate care, attention, and nutrition. The challenge is that after 50, the brain becomes particularly vulnerable. Blood vessels lose elasticity, metabolism slows, and cells become more sensitive to toxins. Poor nutrition may act like a small crack in crystal, barely visible at first, but capable of causing significant damage over time. At the same time, a single well-considered dietary adjustment can initiate recovery. I often tell my patients, you cannot stop time, but you can slow brain aging. To do this, it is necessary to reduce factors that promote inflammation and increase those that support cellular health. Fruits play a key role, as they send metabolic signals that influence whether the brain maintains function or declines. Now, I will describe the first step, the fruits that may quietly impair brain function. Although they appear beneficial, in later adulthood, they may become counterproductive. Many people consume these fruits daily, and they may unknowingly contribute to reduced memory, energy, and mental clarity. There is no need for abrupt elimination. The goal is not simply to remove harmful foods, but to replace them with those that genuinely support neuronal health. The objective is not merely to avoid dementia, but to maintain clarity of thought, mental ease, and overall well-being. In the next section, I will describe in detail the first group of fruits that may negatively affect the brain, explain why they are particularly problematic after the age of 50, and suggest alternatives that can support recovery within days. One of the most important steps in preserving cognitive clarity is to stop believing the myth that all fruits are equally beneficial. This is not the case. The first recommendation I give to patients over 50 is to reduce or temporarily avoid fruits with high fructose content and a high glycemic index, particularly grapes, bananas, watermelon, dates, and pineapple. These fruits are most commonly associated with what I refer to as brain fog. Let me explain. When such fruits are consumed, their sugars are absorbed very rapidly. In response, the body releases insulin, a hormone responsible for regulating excess glucose in the bloodstream. However, in mature adults, cells are no longer as sensitive to insulin as they were in younger years. As a result, the brain receives insufficient usable energy, while excess glucose remains in the blood, contributing to low-grade inflammation. This condition gradually damages blood vessels, including the small capillaries of the brain. I refer to this process as a silent fire. It does not cause pain and is not immediately noticeable, but over time it reduces memory, concentration, and emotional well-being. I once observed a patient, a 58-year-old man named Andrew. He was an intelligent, calm executive, but began to report changes. "Doctor, I increasingly forget the names of my employees. I have become more irritable. I struggle to concentrate. I assume it is simply age. Laboratory tests revealed elevated insulin levels and mild vascular inflammation. The underlying cause, however, was straightforward. Every day for lunch, he consumed a salad made of bananas, grapes, and yogurt. It appeared to be a light and healthy meal. After just 2 weeks of removing these fruits and replacing them with alternatives, which I will discuss later, his mental fog noticeably decreased. He called me and said, "I feel alive again. My thoughts flow easily like they used to." You may say, but fruits contain vitamins. That is true. The issue for the mature brain is not the fruit itself, but the concentration of sugars it contains, especially when consumed on an empty stomach or in the evening when metabolism slows. At such times, the brain receives an excess of energy it cannot efficiently utilize, which leads to oxidative stress. Oxidative stress is one of the primary contributors to neuronal damage. Therefore, if you notice increased forgetfulness, difficulty concentrating, or faster onset of fatigue, I recommend trying a simple experiment. For at least 1 week, remove the following 5 fruits from your diet: grapes, bananas, watermelon, dates, and pineapple. This is not a punishment, but a controlled trial for the benefit of cognitive health. Within several days, many people report that their head feels lighter, attention becomes sharper, and mood more stable. In my experience, individuals who make this change often describe a noticeable improvement in mental clarity. One patient told me, after eliminating bananas and dates in the evening, "Doctor, for the first time in years I woke up without heaviness in my head." This is not a miracle. It is biochemistry. When blood sugar levels stabilize, the brain receives consistent energy, blood vessels function more smoothly, and neural connections begin to recover. I would also like to offer an important caution. Do not replace these fruits with fruit juices, even freshly squeezed ones. Juices can be more problematic because they lack fiber, causing sugar to be absorbed almost immediately. This rapid absorption leads to sudden spikes in blood glucose, placing metabolic stress on the brain. Over time, this contributes to exhaustion, persistent fatigue, dizziness, and the sensation of mental dullness. For this reason, the first step towards supporting brain health is learning to choose fruits consciously. Favor options that are not overly sweet, contain fiber, and are consumed with their natural skin when appropriate. Examples include green apples, berries, plums, and kiwi. I will discuss these in more detail later. For now, it is essential to understand the underlying principle. Excessive intake of sweet fruits can act as a silent adversary to the brain. I often tell my patients, do not be afraid to remove what harms you. Be afraid of inaction. Every day, we continue to overload the brain with sugar. We gradually reduce years of cognitive clarity and memory. Yet this process is reversible through simple changes in habit. You may begin as early as tomorrow. In the morning, replace sweet fruit with half of a tart apple and a small handful of nuts. At lunch, choose berries instead of a fruit salad high in sugar. In the evening, avoid fruit consumption after 5 p.m. These changes may seem minor, but within a week, many people report a noticeable sense of mental lightness and improved focus. Please do not delay. Do not wait until chronic mental fatigue becomes your baseline. In the next recommendation, I will discuss another equally important topic: the fruits that actively support brain health. These fruits nourish neurons, improve vascular function, slow cognitive aging, and help restore neural activity. One of these fruits may come as a surprise. It is often overlooked, yet it has the potential to slow brain aging at the cellular level. For now, remember one key principle. A healthy brain does not begin with medications, but with a conscious approach to nutrition. After excessive sweet fruits are removed from the diet, the brain often experiences relief. However, Removing harmful factors alone is not sufficient. The brain must also be supplied with nutrients that support healing, recovery, and protection. The brain can be compared to a garden. Removing weeds is important, but new seeds must also be planted. This is why the second step is to include fruits that actively support brain health. These fruits nourish neurons, strengthen blood vessels, and activate biological processes that slow cognitive aging. I refer to them as fruits of clarity. First among them are berries, blueberries, black currants, sweet cherries, cranberries, sour cherries, and blackberries. These small fruits provide powerful protection for the brain. They are rich in anthocyanins, compounds that help protect cells from oxidative stress. One may think of them as numerous microscopic shields that reduce damage caused by free radicals and help preserve neuronal integrity. For this reason, regular consumption of berries is associated with a reduced risk of dementia and Alzheimer's disease. This relationship has been demonstrated in multiple studies, and I have also observed it in clinical practice. One of my patients, Mrs. Jenner, age 72, lived alone and cared for her garden. She was particularly concerned about memory loss because her mother had dementia. When we began working together, I recommended that she consume at least a small portion of frozen blueberries or blackcurrants each morning. She initially doubted the impact of such a small change. 6 months later, she told me, "I feel engaged with life again. My thoughts are clearer. I find it easier to remember what I need to buy and where I am going." This was not a miracle, but a natural response of the brain to supportive nutrition. The second beneficial fruit is pomegranate. It is often underestimated, despite its significant effects. Pomegranate helps support cerebral blood vessels, reduce inflammation, and improve circulation. Its polyphenol help prevent the aggregation of cholesterol particles and maintain vascular elasticity. As a result, the brain receives oxygen more efficiently, and people often report improved clarity, lightness, and energy. In my experience, individuals who regularly consume a small amount of fresh pomegranate juice, no more than half a glass per day, often appear and think younger than their chronological age. The third fruit is kiwi. It is sometimes referred to as a fruit of youth, and this description is justified. Kiwi contains vitamin C as well as compounds that support serotonin production, a neurotransmitter associated with emotional balance and well-being. Cognitive decline and depressive symptoms often coexist. When interest in life decreases, brain aging may accelerate. For this reason, I often recommend kiwi in the evening, as it may support relaxation, sleep quality, and neural recovery. The fourth fruit is apples, particularly green apples consumed with the skin. They contain quercetin, a powerful antioxidant that helps protect brain cells from age-related changes. The skin is especially important as it contains a high concentration of beneficial compounds. I have observed many patients with early signs of memory decline who experienced improvement after several months of regular apple consumption. They often reported clearer thinking and improved mental focus. Finally, the fifth fruit, which often surprises people, is avocado. Although botanically classified as a berry, it is one of the brain's most supportive foods. Avocado provides healthy fats that nourish the myelin sheath of neurons, the structure responsible for efficient signal transmission. When myelin integrity is maintained, cognitive processing is faster, memory is stronger, and mental endurance is improved. I often describe avocado as a form of internal nourishment for the brain. In my experience, people who regularly include these foods in their diet tend to maintain better cognitive function and overall well-being. It is important not to focus on quantity. A small handful of berries per day, half an avocado, 1 apple, and one kiwi are sufficient to create meaningful support against cognitive aging. These foods do not need to be consumed all at once. They can be distributed throughout the day. For example, berries in the morning, an apple during the day, and kiwi in the evening. Some patients ask whether such simple measures can truly make a difference. Yes, simplicity is precisely their strength. The brain does not require extreme interventions. It responds to consistency, attention, and care. Even small steps can have therapeutic value. However, there is one more important factor that is rarely discussed. It is not directly related to nutrition, yet it may influence brain health even more strongly than sugar. It is something that can gradually impair cognitive function even in individuals who eat well, stay physically active, and take supplements. If this factor is ignored, all other efforts may become ineffective. I will discuss it in the next section. This will be the third recommendation and possibly the most important of all because it concerns not only what you eat, but also how you live. You already know which fruits can quietly impair brain function and which can help protect it from aging. However, there's a third, often overlooked factor that can negate all these efforts. It is something I observe in most people after the age of 50, even in those who eat well and take good care of themselves. This factor is chronic tension, anxiety, and the absence of inner calm. Believe me, as a physician with 30 years of clinical experience, I can say that neither sugar, nor blood pressure, nor cholesterol ages the brain faster than stress. When a person lives in a constant state of tension, the brain appears to contract. Blood flow is redirected away from the prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for reasoning and decision-making, toward more primitive regions associated with survival. In this state, we stop analyzing and begin reacting as if we are constantly on alert. The brain loses its ability to recover, and memory, attention, and emotional balance gradually decline. One may consume large amounts of beneficial foods, but if daily life is dominated by anxiety, the brain will struggle to cope. I recall a patient, Vladimir Andreevich, aged 65. He came to me with complaints of forgetfulness, insomnia, and fatigue. His laboratory results were excellent. However, during our conversation, I noticed that he constantly spoke about responsibilities, worries, and concerns about the future. His brain was functioning in a continuous state of perceived threat. I told him a simple phrase: "You are not lacking vitamins, you are lacking silence." He smiled and was skeptical, but I insisted. I recommended 5 minutes of calm breathing each morning and a short evening walk without a phone. 1 month later, he said, "Doctor, for the first time in years, I feel inner calm. And surprisingly, my memory has improved." This illustrates the key point. Stress acts on the brain much like sugar, but with an opposite effect. It promotes inflammation, accelerates cellular aging, and disrupts connections between neurons. If stress is not addressed, no amount of healthy food or supplements can fully compensate. This leads to the third recommendation: learn to disconnect and allow yourself periods of calm. Even 10 minutes a day in silence can have a meaningful impact. When I tell patients that silence is a form of treatment, many are surprised. However, it is precisely during rest that the brain undergoes recovery. During sleep, calm states, and slow breathing, a process known as the glymphatic system becomes active. This system serves as the brain's natural cleansing mechanism. Metabolic waste is removed, neurons recover, and neural connections are restored. If life is constantly rushed, this process does not function properly. The brain becomes overloaded, much like a home that has not been cleaned for years. For this reason, I strongly encourage you not to neglect rest. It is not necessary to retreat to the mountains or meditate for long periods. Simply allow yourself moments of quiet. Sit by a window in the morning, drink a glass of water with lemon, close your eyes, and breathe calmly, without news, without distractions. Your brain will respond positively. I have seen people who were exhausted, irritable, and forgetful regain vitality simply by practicing calmness. After 1 week, tension decreased. After 1 month, their gaze became clearer. After 3 months, memory improved. There is one more important warning that should not be overlooked. The brain is highly sensitive to loneliness, especially after the age of 50. When a person withdraws from social interaction, avoids communication, and stops experiencing joy, brain function begins to decline. The brain requires emotional engagement, conversation, and human connection. This is not a minor detail. Social interaction activates the same brain regions involved in learning. When individuals deprive themselves of emotional warmth, neurons gradually lose stimulation. I have observed cases where a person, after losing a spouse, became socially isolated. Within a year, cognitive decline progressed more rapidly than in individuals significantly older. When that person re-engaged with life, resumed social interactions, and regained interest in the world, memory function began to improve. This demonstrates that everything is interconnected. Nutrition, emotional state, and rest form a unified system. If one element is missing, the entire system suffers. However, when balance is restored, the brain is capable of recovery even after years of decline. This is the essence of the 3 recommendations I have shared. Remove foods that overload the brain, add those that nourish and protect it, and most importantly, provide it with calmness, rest, and positive emotional experiences. These are not merely nutritional recommendations. They are recommendations for living. The brain reflects the inner state of a person. If the inner environment is dominated by anxiety, irritation, and constant haste, nutrition alone cannot compensate. But if there is calm, gratitude, and emotional balance, supported by appropriate food choices, clear thinking and enjoyment of life can be maintained even in later decades. In summary, 3 simple daily practices help preserve mental clarity and emotional balance. A small amount of fresh air and quiet time, some movement, even a short walk, and a measure of care for oneself, for loved ones, and for life. And now, the most important point, which I promise to share only at the end, something that may change the way you think about preserving brain youth without medication, is what I refer to as the fruit of lasting mental vitality. I will explain this in the final section. Thank you for listening to the end. That alone already says a great deal. This means that you care. It means that you're someone who does not simply exist, but strives to live consciously with a clear mind and a kind heart. Now let us summarize calmly and objectively. We have reviewed 3 steps, 3 simple, yet remarkably effective approaches to supporting brain health. The first step is to reduce fruits that can quietly impair memory when consumed in excess. Grapes, bananas, dates, watermelon, and pineapple. These fruits can contribute to blood sugar spikes, vascular inflammation, and neuronal fatigue. This is not a prohibition, but an understanding of moderation. Sweet fruits are not harmful by themselves, but in later adulthood, they require balance. When their intake becomes excessive, the brain may lose metabolic stability. The second step is to include fruits that support and protect the brain: berries, pomegranate, kiwi, green apples, and avocado. These foods provide nutrients that support neurons, promote vascular health, and help preserve cognitive function. They represent the biological value of natural compounds, color diversity, and plant-based nutrition. When berries are included in the diet, the body receives antioxidant support. Pomegranate contributes to vascular function. Apples support cellular renewal. These are simple actions, but behind this simplicity lies a consistent approach to self-care. The third step is inner calm. Without it, dietary measures alone are insufficient. The brain is a living, responsive system. It reacts to emotional states. Chronic stress, anxiety, and constant pressure negatively affect brain function. In contrast, calmness, gratitude, and steady breathing support recovery and resilience. For this reason, care for the brain begins not with medication, but with periods of rest, emotional balance, and supportive habits. As promised, I will now mention what I refer to as the fruit of lasting mental vitality. This fruit is blueberry. It is not exotic or rare. It is simple, familiar, and widely available. Yet its natural pigments contain compounds with significant biological activity. Anthocyanins, which give blueberries their deep color, support vascular function, reduce inflammation, and activate brain regions involved in memory and attention. Scientific studies suggest that regular consumption of blueberries is associated with slower cognitive aging. Beyond research data, I have observed this effect in clinical practice. Older patients who added a small daily portion of blueberries to their diet often reported gradual improvements in attention, mood, and even fine motor skills such as handwriting. One patient, age 74, told me, "Doctor, I can read books again without losing the thread." He did not take medication. He simply consumed a small portion of berries daily. This reflects the quiet but powerful effect of consistent nutrition. However, there is something even more influential than blueberries. It is not a food, but it is one of the most supportive factors for brain health: gratitude. Gratitude helps reduce stress hormones, activates brain regions associated with positive emotion, and supports sleep, memory, and emotional balance. Each evening, take a moment to recall 3 simple things you're grateful for. These may be small details: a kind smile, the taste of tea, the sound of rain. This practice acts as gentle emotional regulation. As a bonus for attentive listeners, I would like to share a simple breathing technique that supports oxygen delivery to the brain. Slowly inhale through the nose for a count of 4. Hold the breath for 2 counts. Then exhale through the mouth for 6 counts. Repeat this cycle 5 times. This brief practice supports circulation, reduces anxiety, and helps the brain reset. It can be performed in the morning or before sleep. To conclude, here is a short list of daily habits that support brain health. Begin the morning with a glass of water with lemon. Consume a small portion of berries or 1 green apple daily. Spend at least 15 minutes walking without a phone. Avoid going to bed with unresolved worries. Write them down and set them aside. And at least once a day, allow yourself to smile, even briefly. Take care of yourself. Your time is valuable at any age. Do not allow years to define your clarity, kindness, or inner strength. The brain can remain active and responsive when it receives daily care, simplicity, and attention. Please consider sharing this video with family or friends. It may help someone preserve memory, emotional balance, and peace of mind. You are welcome to share in the comments which recommendation resonated most with you and what you have already tried. Your experience may support others. And of course, subscribe to continue these discussions on health, longevity, and balance. We will continue to talk about what truly matters, how to preserve clarity, warmth, and calm at any stage of life. Take care, and remember, even small steps can lead to meaningful change. Let blueberries be your first step.